Hey, what's going on everyone? Chase here at Rocky Mountain ATV and today we're going to share with you our top 5 tips on how to choose a line in a corner. All right, how to choose a line in a corner, that's what we're talking about today. Most of you have been there before, whether it's practice day or race day, you're battling a race or you're just battling with some friends, and tracks are always changing. Corners are changing throughout the day, and I'm sure a lot of you have been there before. Do you go inside? Do you go outside? Do you just follow the rider through this exact turn? You know, how do you choose what line to do? We all know that corner for dough, jump for show. So corners can make or break a race. Everyone can go fast on a straightaway, but having good lines and knowing what lines to take are gonna make or break it for you. So that's what we're gonna talk about today. First tip is know what line you plan to take well ahead of time. Before you enter any corner on the track, and this goes honestly for the entire track, you should already know in your head where you're planning to go. And the reason that's so important is because if you're coming up to a corner and you don't know what line you're gonna take, well, guess where you're looking? You're looking 10 feet in front of you versus through the corner like we always teach you to do. So you need to know what corner or what line you're gonna take. That way you can set up the turn well in advance. Are you gonna come from the outside and sweep in? Are you gonna miss some breaker bumps right before you go into that rut or into that bull turn? Doesn't matter. You need to plan far ahead. You know what line you're gonna take. You see the pros take their sight lap before Supercross and motocross. That's what they're doing is they're going through and they're doing that sight and they're just looking and saying, okay, in this corner, that's the rut that I'm gonna take, or I'm gonna take this line. That way, when the gate drops, they already have a game plan and things might change, but that's first tip is know ahead of time what line you plan to take. Tip number 2 is have a plan B and C. The previous tip, we talked about how you should already know what line you plan to take when you get to that corner, but you still need to have backup plans because if you're in a race situation, there's somebody right in front of you, you don't want to follow that rider. It is really hard to make a pass, or almost impossible, if you're just taking the same lines as that person. And what do most of us do on race day or practice day? We always kind of gravitate towards the inside lines. Because unless you're Eli Tomac and you can just rail the crap out of an outside berm, in most cases, the inside line is usually the faster line. But Ryan Dungey, 4-time Supercross champ, he's won multiple outdoor championships. Even he admits he's guilty of sticking to the same line too much and not exploring. We hear that term a lot, searching for lines, and pros do this all the time. You need to know what other lines are available, so if you are behind somebody, you have a different line that you can take to try and get around that person. So do yourself a favor. Don't just always stick to the same lines over and over because, like I said, you're not gonna pass anybody doing that. And you need to force yourself at a couple things. One, on practice day, practice choosing different lines. Don't just stay in the same lines the whole day. And also, this takes a little bit of practice, but it's something that everyone can do, is you need to survey the track while you're riding. As you come up to a corner, you might already know what line you plan to take, but try and look at the entire corner to say, oh, there's a rut about 2 feet outside of mine that's actually pretty good. So that way, if you're coming around and somebody's in front of you, you already know there's another line that you can take to try and get around that person. Or don't be afraid to venture to the outside. Because like we said, ruts are always changing, the track is always changing every time you come around. So sometimes when the inside rut starts to get blown out, you can go to the outside where it's gonna be a little bit smoother and you can carry more speed. So that's tip number 2 is just always have a plan B and C and change up your lines. Tip number 3, inside is not always the fastest. I talked about earlier how most riders, including myself, we always kind of gravitate towards the inside. And there's a couple of reasons for that, I feel. One is we've always been told that insides are faster. And in most cases, inside ruts are pretty deep, they're fun. I always like to go and try and, drag foot peg through ruts. It's one of my favorite things to do. But that doesn't mean that the inside is always the fastest line. Look at Eli Tomac. Look at some of those top pros that go rail the outside or just choose a rut that's 2 or 3 ruts over and they get around a guy. The ruts that are getting taken the most, they get the most beat up, they get big breaker bumps coming in, they get acceleration chop coming out. So not only does that make you tired, but it's hard to get through those smoothly. So just know that as a track is changing, developing, move towards the outside, move to different ruts. Don't just think the inside is always gonna be the fastest line, because in most cases it isn't. And a great way to know if it is or not is gauge yourself off of other riders. If you and a rider come into the same corner at the same time, and maybe he's a little bit outside of you and he pulls away from you exiting that corner, then chances are that inside rut's not the faster line. But if you do go to that inside rut and you gain time on the guy, well, it is the faster line. But just know it's not always the case, and that's why you have to be okay with venturing out and trying different things, and always, asking yourself, like, am I taking the most optimal line possible? So just remember that inside isn't always the fastest. Tip number 4 is look far ahead. We've preached it in a lot of videos. You never want to be looking down at your fender. You want to be as looking far ahead as possible so you know what to expect, and especially when you're coming through a turn, the second you stop looking ahead is typically when you stand the bike up and you mess up that turn. But it's also important because if you look at the exit of a turn before you get there, maybe you're coming down a straightaway and you can see the exit, maybe there's a down rider. Well, now you know, okay, I need to switch up my line, and it's not a surprise when you get there and realize that somebody's in your line falling over and you have to stop or try and go around them. The other tip is try and plan maybe 2-3 corners ahead. Some tracks, depending on the vantage point, you can see far enough ahead that you can kind of get a lay of, hey, what's going on 2-3 corners ahead of me? And you can see riders going through turns, and it just helps you give a better understanding of how the track is developing and if any lines have changed. That way, again, you're making that game plan. So when you get to that third corner, you've already been able to see what's going on there, and you have confidence that you've known that you're choosing the correct line that's going to get you through there the fastest. So that would be tip number 4, is just look as far ahead as possible. So tip number 5 is practice your weaknesses. Sounds simple, but if you're in a race situation on a day and you feel like you were just messing up those inside ruts all day long, or you couldn't, you feel like you couldn't rail the outside berm as fast or as hard as you wanted to, those are things that you want to go practice and work on. That way, the next time you go out and race, or if you're just battling with your buddies, you have confidence. We all want to get better riding a dirt bike, right? So take every opportunity that you can to find out maybe what you're not the best at, what you could work on, focus on those. Do practice drills. We've talked about a lot of different drills. We have great videos that talk about some of our favorite. Do practice drills. Ask people to give you advice. If there's somebody that's better at going through a deep inside rut that's got acceleration chop or big breaker bumps or outsides, go ask them for help and just learn how to improve your riding so you're more confident the next time you go out. Bonus tip, don't be afraid to make your own lines. If a track is beat up and blown out, don't think you always have to go in the same lines that are already there. We see top level guys do it all the time. I think Barsha, to me, stands out a lot. You'll see him come to the outside of a turn and then square it up and just cut across all the ruts. And that's an easy way to make a smoother line in a corner that is totally blown out. If the track's getting really worn out and you're having a hard time finding a line that you like, you can make a new one. Totally fine. Look at Dylan Ferrandis, crafty Frenchman, right? It's because he's always searching, finding new creative lines that help him get around the track a little bit faster. That's our bonus tip. And that is our top 5 tips for how to choose a line in a corner. I would love to hear your feedback. What are some things that you have learned, that you have implied that have helped you? Maybe it's just on practice day, or if it's on race day, what have you done to make your racecraft a little bit better? Leave those comments below. That's also gonna help other riders out. More questions and comments and feedback, we're always here to give it to you, and make sure to get subscribed to the Rocky Mountain YouTube channel if you like this top 5. We've got a lot more great videos just like what you saw today. Riding tip videos, we've got bike builds or how-to videos. We have all the best content, so make sure to get subscribed, hit that notification bell, and stay up to date. I am Chase, and we'll see you on the trails.